Nazif Muhtarog Bey'e dönüyorum. Evliliğinin ismi Ali Sedat. Modern sayısı bilime bir eşari yaklaşım tarzında değerlendirebiliriz. 20-25 dakikalık bir süre içerisinde bize muhabbetiyle sunacak, özetleyecektir. Buyurun.
Teşekkür ederim hocam. Öncelikle bu sempozyumu organize edenlere, organizasyonda görev yapan arkadaşlara çok teşekkür ediyorum. Böylesine ihmal edilmiş bir alanın tekrardan canlandırılması adına bence büyük bir adım. Ve pazar gününün böylesine erken bir saatinde de bizi dinlemeye gelen bütün katılımcılara da ayrıca teşekkürlerimi sunuyorum. Kısa bir Türkçe giriş yaptıktan sonra teknik terminolojinin yoğunluğundan dolayı İngilizceye geçeceğim. Ali Sedat Bey'in Kavaid-i Tahavvulat fi Harekat-ı Zerrat isimli kitabı üzerine bir sunum olacak. Fakat bu kitabın mevcudiyetinden haberim belki 2-2,5 yıl önce falan oldu. Ali Sedat Bey'i genelde önemli bir mantıkçı olarak biliyordum. Fakat modern bilimle ilişkisini hiç duymamıştım. Bilmiyorum aranızda bu konuda daha önceden bilgisi olan var mı? Fakat bu eserin bazı bilim tarihçileri tarafından böyle yan referans olarak verildiğini sonradan sadece gördüm. İşte İhsan Fazlıoğlu, Ekmelettin İhsanoğlu gibi. Bu konu, yani bu kitap üzerine özellikle yapılmış tek bir çalışma var. O da makale statüsünde Celal Saraç'ın bir çalışması. Kitabı 110 yıl önce ülkemize termodinamiği ilk tanıtan kitap olarak sunuyor. Kitabın hususiyeti şu, ilk defa termodinamiği tanıtıyor, Darwin'in teorisini tanıtıyor. Fakat kitabın analizi sadece tanıttığı teorilere bağlı kalarak gerçekleşmiş Cahit Saraç tarafından. Fakat benim keşfettiğim, 1,5 yıldır da üzerinde uğraştığım bir kitap ve İngilizce'de çevirmiş olduk 1,5 yıl içerisinde. Kitap sadece modern dönemi, yani 19. yüzyıl diyelim, daha da spesifik olalım, önemli fizik teorilerini, hatta biyoloji teorilerini, Darwin teorisini, termodinamiği tanıtmakla kalmıyor. Bunu eşari kelamı perspektifinden kritik bir analize de tabi tutuyor ve yorumlamasını yapıyor. Bu açıdan ben bunu Osmanlı döneminin modern bilimle etkileşimi bağlamında yazılmış bir bilim felsefesi kitabı olarak da değerlendirilebileceğini düşünüyorum. Bu açıdan ben biraz daha yoğunlaşacağım şimdi sunumda. So, I will start to talk about this book in English now. Before, Ali Sedat Bey is famously known as a Turkish logician, the son of Ahmet Cevdet Pasha and brother of Fatma Ali Hanım. Fatma Ali Hanım is the woman behind the 50 lira, 50 lira in Turkish currency. This is the tomb of Ahmet Cevdet Pasha in Fatih Mosque, and there are two graveyards before it. There is no name, but one of them must be Ali Sedat Bey's graveyard. So Ali Sedat Bey has received a very special education from very specific tutors, private tutors on math, physics, chemistry. He also went to Hukuk Mektebi, the law school, taught in Galatasaray Sultanisi, Mahreci Aklam, and Hukuk Mektebi later as well. So the book I will talk about is entitled Kavaid-i Tahavvulat fi Harekat-ı Zerrat, which I translated as The Principles of Transformation in the Motion of Particles, which was published in 1883. However, the other book, there are many other books, but the other significant book is called Mizan-ı Nikul fil Mantık vel Usul, which is the book on logic, which is known better than the other book, which was published later, because from his childhood, he was more interested in science than in logic, and this is why his father, Ahmet Cevdet Pasha, wrote Miyar Sedat to Ali Sedat, so that his son become also interested in logic. So his interest in logic starts later. Before explaining the content of the book, I would like to give some background information about the interaction of the Ottomans with European ideas and science. So this interaction even started in the 15th and 16th centuries. The first significant scientific work introduced to Ottoman was Noah Tourette's book, translated by Tezkereci Köse İbrahim Efendi. With that, they learned the geocentrical system. The interaction gained a momentum in the later centuries, and the transfer of technology was quite significantly appealing in that period. The Ottomans understood that there is something wrong in terms of the military power. They began to lose lands, began to lose wars, and they identified the main reason of this loss in terms of technological problems. And they sent people to Europe to study there, and they established new educational institutions, and also began to translate important scientific books from European languages into Turkish. But the main emphasis was on military sciences and technologies. And there were pragmatic concerns, and even if we examine the books written in pure science, theoretical science, we see that the books in organic chemistry and analytic chemistry were abundant in comparison to the books in general chemistry because of the need in medicine. You know, the medicine school, the Tıp Mektebi, is one of the earlier schools founded. And the theoretical dimensions of sciences were largely ignored in this area. This, just one example about this, for the thesis. Artranik Gırcikyan translated Gamoth's physics book into Ottoman language. This book was reprinted several times in Europe, and Gamoth revised the book also by adding the concept of energy and the laws of conservation of energy into the book in the later editions. But the second edition of the Ottoman translation, which was reprinted when the 20th edition of the Gamoth's book in original language was printed, that already included these talks on energy, but it was not included in the second print edition of the Ottoman translation. And the big problem here is the increasing materialism and science and Islam conflict, which I will talk about now, which I call the conflict thesis. So the first appearing idea was the idea that Islam and science are incompatible. There is a conflict between them. There are maybe two sources here, as far as I can understand, with respect to Ali Sadat's background. I won't talk about later Mutekellimun and the other intellectuals. At the time Ali Sadat wrote the book, there was first the missionary activities that echoed within the public schools and learned circles, which presented Islam as a religion with anti-scientific spirit. And Ali Sadat engaged in a discussion with a student from the imperial school, Abdülhakim Hikmet, who propounded this thesis and inspired mainly by the American missionary Cornelius Van Dyck, who was in one of the Protestant schools opened in the Middle East, which is now called the American University of Beirut. The other line of influence is Ludwig Büchner's vulgar materialism, which was talked earlier in this section. So, the content of the book includes many ideas, scientific ideas like atomism, thermodynamics, chemistry, elements, electricity, magnetism, the laws of conservation, energy, transformation of energy, heat, mechanical work, biology, Darwin's theory of evolution, life, soul, astronomy, light, Kelam atomism, human will, and at the end he put a separate section called Lahika, or addendum, in which he discusses three main philosophical strands in the whole history of humanity. He classifies all the ideas into three groups: materialism, Maddiyun, spiritualism, Ruhaniyun, and Ishrakiyun, which he understands as monism. And he considers the mutakallimun as materials, literally materials. So he doesn't think that the soul is a separate substance, a different substance like mujarrad substance from the matter. It is extended, it's understood as the early mutakallimun understood the soul, the nature of soul. So, as I said, there is only one study on this book, Celal Saraç, but it is largely insufficient because of the following reasons. In this book, Ali Sadat does not only explain thermodynamics, but the whole mechanical paradigm that regulates the scientific practice during the 19th century. So he tries to give the whole background picture of the scientific practice in the 19th century Europe. So he doesn't talk about just thermodynamics. He starts with atoms and with the galaxies. In addition, he compares it with the Asharite metaphysics and offers a critical evaluation and interpretation of the world. If you would like to add something or any question, because we don't have any separate section for question and answers, please do that, but I will try to finish in 20 minutes.
Galaxies.
Yeah.
Galaxies.
The collection of stars, of course. Science and Philosophy, I think this is the first book on philosophy of science in Ottoman culture. Maybe here we are very valuable scholars from all the Islamic world. Given the date of this book, we may give an idea about whether there are other books like this in the whole Islamic world. Okay, I will quote now from a scholar who characterizes the sciences in the Europe in the 19th century from a book published in 1881. And now we will see how describe the same ideas by Ali Sadat. The science of physics, in addition to general laws of dynamics and their application to interaction of solid, liquid, and gaseous bodies, embraces the theory of those agents which were formerly designated as imponderables, light, heat, electricity, and magnetism, etc. All these are now treated as forms of motion, as different manifestations of the same fundamental energy. So the idea here is emphasis on the unifying role of the concept of energy and the program of mechanical explanation. That is to say, there are atoms and everything explained by their motions. So in the introduction of the Qawaid, Ali Sadat talks about all natural phenomena ranging from electricity, magnetism to light, heat, and he said that all these different phenomena can be explained by a common source, which is the various kinds of motion of the particles of matter. And this is said 2 years later when the other scholar described the general scientific practice in Europe. All the transformations in nature stem from this source and obey certain laws described as mathematically by scientists in Europe. So within this perspective, he examines every significant phenomenon in the universe, from the states of atoms to characteristics of planets and stars in the sky. So that includes motion of atoms, molecules, how their combinations take place, and how these motions give rise to various chemical and physical phenomena. And the book, also he describes the laws of conservation of energy, shows that they apply to molecular motions of time bodies as well as to biological states of plants and animals. Everything in the universe obey these conservation laws. And to conclude the content of the scientific content of the book, the purpose here is to give a comprehensive picture of the working mechanism of the whole universe. It's not just the matter of Darwin or thermodynamics. Okay, how does he refer to the conflict thesis in this book? So as the conflict thesis argues, modern science appeared in Europe in the 19th century is incompatible with Islam. But Ali Sadat argues just the opposite. Apart from being incompatibility, it supports Islam in two significant points, he says. Atomism and thermodynamics present a discontinuous dynamic world. Every observable phenomenon originates from discrete units of matter that are always in motion. According to Ali Sadat, this is exactly what the Ash'arites proposed hundreds of years ago. Imam al-Ash'ari considered everything to be constituted from indivisible parts whose existence can only exist momentarily. That is to say, their existence must be renewed constantly Thus, they must be found in different states at each moment. That is to say, they are always in motion. And this is exactly what thermodynamics say. Everything is in constant motion because what we call heat is motion of particles. If the motion of particles fasten, the heat increases. And there is no absolute zero observed in the universe. The absolute zero, the Kelvin 0 degree, has not been observed in the universe. That is to say, everything has some sort of heat, and that is to say, everything is in motion. And this is exactly the same idea that accidents cannot endure. There is no accident that exists over time, over 2 seconds. So, on the basis of this idea, I listed out things. This is a kind of confirmation of atomism and rejection of hylomorphism. I'm sorry. Hylomorphism, it must be hylomorphism. But here, there is some unclarity because Alistair also talks about ether. He says ether is the matter, the subtle matter between atoms. And he says there are different views on ether. Either they are constituted out of indivisible particles or not. If they are constituted out of indivisible particles, there are gaps between them. So it supports indivisible particles, the idea of atomism. If they can be divided infinitely many times at infinitum, then it would be indeed a rejection of atomism, but he doesn't respond to this option. I think there is a kind of gap here in the argument. The other view is, the other conclusion he derives from thermodynamics is the scientific confirmation of the view of human will against the Mu'tazila. Remember what the Mu'tazila says, humans create their own actions out of nothing. But Ali Sadat thinks this is against the law of conservation of energy because, you know, everything that happens happens in relation to a certain fixed amount of energy. That fixed amount of energy never changes. One form transforms into another, but the total quantity of motion and the total energy is fixed. If somebody creates something out of nothing, that person should increase the total energy of the world. But this is a kind of violation of the principle of conservation of energy. This kind of argument, I think, appears for the first time in the history of philosophy with respect to the concept of energy. But a similar argument appeared in the work of Cordova, a Cartesian philosopher in the 17th century. He gives a similar argument. He uses the concept of total quantity of motion, roughly the momentum today, what we call momentum. If human soul causes something in the universe, the material universe, it will increase the total amount of motion, momentum, it will violate the conservation principle. And now we see another argument uses energy as the source, and this argument today is used also by the physicalists who argue that there is no soul in human body. Everything is material. I mean, this is a significant argument. We should give credit to Al-Sadat. As you can see here, the division about what Falsafa say, Ash'ari Kelam say, and modern science say, there are parallels here with modern science and Ash'ari Kelam. We just spoke to these ones. Past this. And Darwinism. With respect to the origination of macrobodies out of tiny bodies, Al-Sadat talks about there are two significant views. The first view is the creation out of nothing. I mean, the macrobodies are created. And the second view, they gradually evolve from the tiny bodies. And Darwinism is the most mature form of the second view. But Al-Sadat says, neither camp has come up with a satisfying argument. He doesn't give his position on this issue. Maybe Darwinism is true, maybe not. But the point is, they don't, neither option have a satisfying answer. And now, his reasons for this, with respect to Darwinism, is the following. Darwinism says, I mean, there are two objections to Darwinism, already known. We have never observed the origination of new species, and intermediate forms are missing. But the proponents of Darwin say, draw to the attention of the early stage of science of geology. We don't have sufficient scientific research to confirm these, intermediate stages, etc. Al-Sadat responds, according to the current stage of the science of geology, Darwin's theory is not something acceptable then. This is a kind of jadali argument, you know. They don't have sufficient evidence to support their own theory. And we should wait for, you know, whether they will find any evidence or not. Okay. There is also a contradiction here according to Sadat. I will not talk about that much, but there is one more significant point I should really emphasize before finishing, which is, I think, the most significant point of the book. Sadat does not only respond to the conflict thesis, he tries to open a space for the metaphysical foundation of the current science, which I think is the Asharite Kelam. What is that? It is occasionalism. Everything is constantly created by God. The finite beings are causally inert. God is the sole efficient cause. On the basis of this idea, he interprets all the concepts of thermodynamics from this perspective. For example, what is energy, force, and law? There are naturalistic and positivistic interpretations of these notions. If you consider force as something really acting on things in nature, you ascribe causality to it and interpret it naturalistically. However, kinetic energy is an empty term that expresses only the quantity of motion. It's a mathematical value that helps us calculate the links between different states of objects in accordance with certain mathematical descriptions. It is not something self-subsisting and existing. It's a nominal concept. And this is very parallel to the idea of occasionalism. There is an explanation here, but I don't have time to talk about. Force doesn't have to be understood as a causal capacity on objects. It can be treated either as a manifestation of divine power or as a term that expresses a law about the patterns of motions. Again, laws of nature are divine habits of creation, adatullah. At the end of the day, Sadat bases natural science on occasionalist metaphysics and offers nominalist interpretations of the concepts. Okay, these are the main conclusions. As I said in the introduction, this is a significant book which has been ignored so far, unfortunately. But happily, we translated this book into English. Hopefully, it will come next year. And I hope it would initiate a discussion on the Ottoman view on science, as well as some kind of inspiration for current situation of the Islamic world with respect to modernity. Thank you very much.
Gerçekten Sedat'ın önemli göz ardı edilmiş sanatlar hareketler, termodinamik ve teorisi üzerinden modern Avrupa müspetliğine eşari kelam üzerinden felsefi bir yaklaşım, orijinal bir yaklaşım sunmuş oldu bize. Kendisinin ifade ettiği gibi var, bundan sonraki tartışmalara bir başlangıç teşkil eder. İngilizceye çevrilmiş olması da kitabın ülkemiz dışındaki çevrelerine açılması açısından oldukça önemli. Tekrar tebrik ediyorum.